welcome back to our next 5 for 5. Today I actually grabbed Pastor Mark and I made him be part of the video. He couldn't get away this time. It's kind of interesting. Sandra ran across a podcast that's been put out by John Krasinski. He's from The Office. He played Jim in The Office. He started a podcast called The Good News Network. And he just tells stories of stuff that's going on that's really positive right now. And it's been pretty interesting to watch. And episode number 3, which I saw this week, had something very interesting in it. He interviews some people who are part of the COVID unit within a hospital in Boston. And he says to them, what are some of the things that you want people to know about that you're not hearing in other places? And one of the doctors says, I don't know why they're not telling the stories of people who are healed of this. That there are so many people of all ages who have come into the hospital, who were sick, who have been treated, and now are being released because they're over it. They're past it. There's people of all ages, and he highlighted a 104-year-old man who was being released from the hospital because now he's past it. He's gotten over it. And he's like, all we hear about in the media is people who are dying of it. Right. But we aren't hearing stories of how many people are past this, who've made it through. And I was really encouraged by that. And I just really wanted to talk about some of the encouraging things that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. So, Pastor Mark, what's some of the cool things that you've been seeing?
From my perspective, the interaction that I have with people, be it even though it's at a distance, and even though we're technically not 6 feet apart, but we only do it in this context do we actually sort of breach that line. But in my interaction with people that I come in contact with during the week, I'm finding that what I am interpreting is that hearts are open. And this is something that one of the conversations that Pastor Jim and I have had, what's changing? What's going to be different about Cayuga County, the United States of America? What's going to be different about us? And I think that one of the things is that we have a season or a period of time where hearts are going to be open to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that in a way, what this epidemic has done or pandemic has done is it's been like a plow turning soil over to prepare hearts to hear the truth. It's ironic that this is spring. This is exactly what the farmers are doing right now. They are preparing, they're going out into their fields, they're turning over the soil so as to plant the seed. And so I'm connecting the two concepts together, and as I'm interacting with people, I'm seeing that people are longing to talk, longing to interact, and even though that they have to keep the distance, some of them are wearing masks, or most are going to be wearing masks, that there's a soil, the heart soil is open to hear the truth. And so what I'm trying to see, what I'm seeing is that I need to be ready to speak into that. And not just some trite terminology, but to really listen and then to speak truth into their lives. And I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a clerk at a store, a young man, probably in his mid-20s. He knew about where our church was located. He says, I've walked by there before. And he said, you know what, I think I'm going to check you guys out and come there. And I said, yeah, when the ban is lifted and we're allowed to come together, I said, I encourage you to check us out online, it's Sunday at 10:15. And he said, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Very nice guy, super nice. And yet evidence of a heart that I feel has been turned over, prepared to hear the truth. And so I think this is an amazing time for us as the church to have an influence in people's lives that are around us, even with social distancing and masks in front of us. So,
and one of the things that we forget about is that we are having an influence on people even though we can't see it. So if you have a conversation with a young man like this and his response is, I need to know God, I'm desperate for hope in my life, tell me more about your church. I want to come and check out your service. I mean, that's kind of something where you start with seed, you watch it grow, and it turns into fruit.
Right.
But that's just not always the case. In fact, most cases, you don't see the fruit. You don't even know if it's going to be there. But to use the farming metaphor, if you don't plant the seeds, there's no way that you're going to get fruit. Mm-hmm. And one of the truths that I found in my life is that I want to sow as many seeds as I possibly can. I want to be putting God's truth and God's hope and encouragement into people's lives as often as I can. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I've been able to see something come full circle that I never anticipated I would see. Where some seeds that I planted in, we'll say, your life, that I never see grow, I never see come to places of fruit. I hear from someone else who knows you that the seeds that I planted are actually producing fruit, and you have planted those seeds in somebody else's life.
Wow.
You know,
that's pretty cool.
So you just have to believe that if God gives you the opportunity to speak truth into someone's life, that just by speaking the truth, you're planting seeds that God's going to use to grow, even though you might not ever see the growth take place.
Mm-hmm. Just one concept that I was going to think about as I'm listening to you, we're talking about the power of influence and the power of recognizing that the soil of the heart has been opened and prepared in the planting of the seed. You know, the goal is for the truth to be planted, the truth of Jesus to be planted and grow into their lives. I'm thinking of the concept of harvest. And in my mind, when I think harvest, I don't think of modern day technology. I think of old time technology of a sickle, you know, the sigh, the sweeping of that motion of cutting down the grain. And at some other point, maybe in another 5 to 5, I'd like to talk a little bit about that concept of what does harvest look like. But for this sake right now, recognizing that in our culture right now and in our time, we are at a time that we have never seen before, where hearts are prepared, their hearts have been turned over. Hardened hearts that would not listen to the truth has been opened up so that the truth can be planted. And that we're going to trust that God would give you divine appointments in your relationships with people, in your network, your family, a postman that's coming to your door, or dropping off mail at your mailbox, or you see a neighbor who comes out to cut his grass, or whatever. Yeah, you're still keeping the distance, but yet the soil has been turned because they're ready to hear the truth of Jesus. And so we're going to encourage you. We want to take advantage of this opportunity and recognize with spiritual eyes that God is doing something incredible in our society right now at this very moment.
You know, that reminds me of some of the stuff we're talking about in Elevate. And I see we're kind of at the time limit that we would like to have for one of these episodes of 5 to 5. So just invite you to be part of what we're doing at Elevate, where we talk about how there's a turning over of the soil and how we need to be planting seeds and how everybody in the church can be involved in this. So tonight at 7 o'clock, we're meeting again for Elevate, and I hope that you're going to be part of that. But we're going to extend this conversation into tomorrow's 5 to 5 too. So I hope you stay tuned for that.